What if every dollar you poured into your family, millions built from sweat and sacrifice, became the weapon they used to stab you in the back? Imagine standing in a glittering mansion you paid for, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and silk drapes, only to hear the words that shatter your soul. You're not welcome here. Your own son, your trusted friend, your empire turned against you in a plot so vicious it'll leave you breathless. $23 million, a lifetime of love, and a legacy you built brick by brick, stolen by those you trusted most. How far would you go to reclaim your life? Buckle up, because this Atlanta tycoon's fight is about to unravel a betrayal so shocking you won't believe who's holding the knife. What's the cost of trust? Stick around to find out. Welcome to Revenge X, where electrifying stories of betrayal and triumph set your soul ablaze. We're thrilled to have you join our community of viewers who celebrate unyielding resilience and fierce courage. Hit that subscribe button to never miss a heart-pounding tale. And it'd be incredible if you smashed the like button, shared this video, or dropped a comment with the time and city or country you're watching from. Your likes, shares, and heartfelt comments are the greatest spiritual gift, the fuel that keeps this channel burning bright. Now, buckle up for a story that'll hit you right in the feels. Let's dive in. I'm Arthur Reynolds, a 8-year-old real estate tycoon from Buckhead, Atlanta, who clawed his way from nothing to a fortune worth tens of millions. My life's work was building an empire. Shabby rental units turned into gleaming skyscrapers, but more than that, it was building a family, or so I thought. I poured my heart and soul into my son Nathan and his ambitious wife, Vanessa, giving them everything. A $15 million mansion on Peachtree Road, lavish vacations in Aspen, and millions more to fuel their high society lifestyle. I believed it was love. Turns out it was a carefully scripted play, and I was the fool holding the purse strings. That evening, I sat in Nathan's sprawling living room, sinking into the buttery leather sofa I'd bought them as a housewarming gift. The glow from their 15-foot Christmas tree bounced off the Swarovski chandelier, another $50,000 essential I'd funded for Vanessa's aesthetic vision. The air was thick with the scent of her, $500 a jar candles, but nothing could mask the icy edge in Nathan's voice as he avoided my gaze. "Dad," he said, his words slicing through the warm holiday glow, "I'm sorry, but you're not welcome here for Christmas this year." The sentence hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, sharp and merciless. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Not welcome?" I echoed, my voice trembling not from anger, but from a raw, searing pain that clawed at my insides. "What do you mean, Nathan?" He wouldn't meet my eyes, his stare glued to the black marble coffee table I'd spent $25,000 on last spring when Vanessa deemed their old furniture tasteless. "Vanessa's family wants a private Christmas," he mumbled, his voice shrinking with every word, as if he were folding into himself. "Her parents, they want a certain vibe. You don't fit. Don't fit." The phrase echoed in my skull like a funeral dirge. Me, the man who dropped $5 million on their down payment, $3 million on Vanessa's French-style garden, and another $15 million to bankroll her Birkin bags and Bentley convertibles, was now unfit for their holiday table. I scanned the room, every inch screaming my sacrifice. The walnut floors I'd paid $100,000 to install. The silk drapes Vanessa needed for privacy, costing me another 30 grand. The surround sound system Nathan insisted on for their extravagant parties, wired with my last home equity loan. This house was my legacy, built brick by brick with my sweat and blood. Yet here I was, an outsider in the empire I'd funded. Vanessa sauntered in from the kitchen, a glass of $1,000 Bordeaux in hand, her eyes skimming over me like I was the hired help. "Arthur, let's not make this messy," she said, her tone syrupy but razor sharp. "My parents have standards. Tacos and stories about laying bricks in the 72nd? Not their scene." She smirked, a cruel twist of her lips, as if my life's work, my very existence, was a cheap punchline. The pain surged, a tidal wave threatening to drown me. But I held it together, my hands gripping the armrests until my knuckles whitened. I thought of Sarah, my loyal housekeeper of 30 years, who'd warned me time and again. "Mr. Reynolds, real family doesn't treat you like a stranger." Sarah, with her quiet wisdom and unshakable loyalty, had seen through Vanessa's charm from the start, but I'd brushed her off, blinded by my love for Nathan. Now, her words burned in my mind like a flare. But Vanessa wasn't the only snake in this den. The real gut punch came from Preston Caldwell, my eldest son, the one I'd trusted to carry the family name with pride. Preston, with his polished smiles and promises to protect our legacy, had been scheming behind my back, whispering to Vanessa, convincing her to push me out to secure his own place in her parents' elite circle. He'd betrayed me, his own father, for a seat at their table. Then, As if the knife wasn't deep enough, Nathan dropped another bomb. Preston said it'd be easier if you didn't come, Dad. He's arranged for Vanessa's parents to stay here for a whole month. They don't want any distractions. Distractions. I, the man who'd made them millionaires, was a distraction. My heart shattered, but I refused to let them see it. I stood, my knees creaking from decades of hard work, and headed for the door. Tell Vanessa's parents Merry Christmas, I said, my voice steady as steel despite the storm raging inside. As the door clicked shut behind me, I heard Vanessa's whisper, sharp and venomous. Finally, we're rid of that old nuisance. In my car, I sat frozen, staring at the twinkling Christmas lights of Buckhead's mansions, each one a reminder of the life I'd built and the family I'd lost. 5 million, 15 million, 20 million. The numbers spun in my head, each one a fresh wound, a testament to my betrayal. Nathan's rejection, Vanessa's contempt, Preston's treachery, they'd all conspired to erase me. But as I drove into the Atlanta night, a new fire sparked within me. Not just anger, but resolve. They'd chosen to cast me out, but Arthur Reynolds wasn't a man to be discarded. Sarah would stand by me, my rock in this storm. Vanessa and Preston would soon learn that betraying a man like me came with a price measured not in dollars, but in consequences they'd never see coming. The Atlanta night swallowed my Cadillac Escalade as I drove away from Nathan's mansion, the Christmas lights of Buckhead blurring into streaks of red and green through the tears I refused to let fall. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as the numbers rolled through my mind, like a slot machine spitting out my life's mistakes. $5 million for their house, $3 million for their garden, $15 million in cash transfers over 6 years to keep Vanessa's socialite dreams alive, $23 million total, drained from my accounts while I lived on frozen dinners and patched up suits to make ends meet. Every dollar was a brick in the wall of their ingratitude, and I'd laid each one with a father's blind love. Back at my modest Buckhead bungalow, a house I hadn't renovated since my wife, Ellen, passed a decade ago, I collapsed into my worn recliner, the leather creaking under my weight. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the ancient fridge I couldn't afford to replace. My mind replayed Nathan's words, Vanessa's smirk, and Preston's betrayal, each memory a fresh cut. But the deepest wound came from a new realization. My best friend, Marcus Tate, a retired contractor who'd built half of Atlanta's skyline with me, had known about their plan to exclude me. Marcus, the man I'd trusted with my secrets, who'd toasted my successes at every milestone, had been at Nathan's last week, laughing over bourbon while they plotted to cut me out. He'd texted me earlier, all fake concern. "You good, Art? Heard you might skip Christmas." The lie stung worse than the truth. I stood and paced the living room, my shadow dancing across Ellen's old piano, untouched since her fingers last played it. My chest ached with the weight of it all, not just the money, but the years I'd spent believing I was building a legacy for my sons. I'd been a fool, pouring my fortune into people who saw me as a cash machine with an expiration date. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, Vanessa's name flashing like a warning sign. I answered, bracing myself. "Yo, old man," she sneered, her voice dripping with street-smart venom. "You really thought you'd waltz into our Christmas like some washed-up Santa? My folks don't want your low-rent vibes harshing their holiday buzz. Stay in your lane, geezer." The words hit like a sucker punch, her tone raw and cruel, like she was spitting on my life's work. Before I could respond, she hung up, leaving me staring at the blank screen. The betrayal didn't stop there. Another call came, this time from Preston, his voice smooth as snake oil. "Dad, don't take it personal. It's just business. Vanessa's parents are big players, old money, you know. They don't vibe with your hustle. The word twisted the knife deeper. My hustle had paid for his Yale degree, his Tesla, his entire damn life. But the final blow landed when my phone pinged with a group chat message from Nathan's assistant, Lila, a mousy girl I'd hired to keep his books. She'd accidentally forwarded an email chain where Vanessa, Preston, and Marcus mocked me. "Arthur's too busy playing Daddy Warbucks to notice we're bleeding him dry. Let's keep him out of sight this Christmas. His stories about pouring concrete are a total snooze." The email included a photo of them clinking champagne glasses at a yacht party I'd funded last summer, captioned, "To freedom from the old man's baggage." End 4. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, the cold hardwood biting into my palms. The room spun as the layers of deception piled up my son, my other son, my best friend, all conspiring to erase me. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but instead I sat there, paralyzed by the weight of my own stupidity. I'd given them everything, believing it would buy their love, their respect. Instead, it bought me a one-way ticket to oblivion. The fight in me flickered, nearly snuffed out by despair. But then I thought of Sarah, my housekeeper, who'd stayed loyal through every storm. She'd left a voicemail earlier, her voice warm and steady. "Mr. Reynolds, you don't need their table to be family. Come to my place for Christmas, my kids would love your stories." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. But the hits kept coming. My phone lit up again, this time with a text from Vanessa's mother, Claudia Wentworth, a buckhead socialite who'd always looked at me like I was gum on her Louboutin. "Arthur, don't embarrass yourself further," she wrote. "Your money's welcome, but your presence is a liability. Stick to wiring cash and spare us the drama." The sheer audacity of it, calling me a liability after I'd bankrolled their entire lifestyle, lit a fire in my gut. I pictured Claudia's smug face, her husband Edward's condescending nod, and the way they'd all laughed behind my back at the charity gala I'd sponsored for their precious Wentworth Foundation. $2 million I'd donated to their cause, only to be told I wasn't classy enough for their holiday dinner. The internal struggle was brutal. Part of me wanted to call Nathan, to beg for an explanation, to believe this was all a mistake. Maybe I'd been too pushy, too proud of my roots, too working class for their refined tastes. Maybe if I apologized, they'd let me back in. But another part of me, the part that had built an empire from nothing, that had buried Ellen and kept going, screamed for justice. I wasn't just a checkbook. I was a man, a father, a human being who deserved respect. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was a theft of my dignity, my identity. I thought of the late nights I'd spent working to fund their dreams, the Christmases I'd spent alone while they partied, the way I'd ignored Sarah's warnings because I wanted to believe in my sons. Then came the third shock, a notification from my bank, a withdrawal of $50,000 from a joint account I'd set up for Nathan's emergency fund, made that morning without my approval. The memo read, "Christmas catering Wentworth party." They dipped into my money again, even after banning me from their celebration. The audacity was staggering, a final middle finger to my years of sacrifice. I stood, my hands shaking, and walked to my desk, where a photo of Ellen smiled back at me. "I'm sorry, love," I whispered. "I let them make a fool of me." But as I looked at her, I felt her strength, her fire, urging me to fight back. I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. "I'm done being their ATM," I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. "I need your help, Sarah. We're going to make them regret this." Her response was immediate, unwavering. "I'm with you, Mr. Reynolds. Let's show them who you really are." The plan was forming, a storm brewing in my chest. Vanessa, Preston, Marcus, Claudia. They'd all underestimated me. They thought they could bleed me dry and toss me aside like trash. But I was Arthur Reynolds, and I wasn't going down without a fight. The Christmas lights outside my window flickered, but inside, a new light burned. The promise of retribution, sharp and unrelenting. The Atlanta dawn broke gray and heavy, the kind of morning that mirrored the storm in my chest as I sat at my kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee in hand. The sting of last night's betrayals, Nathan's rejection, Vanessa's venom, Preston's scheming, Marcus's duplicity, and Claudia's cold dismissal lingered like a bruise. But the pain was no longer just a dull ache. It was a roaring fire, fueled by every memory of my sacrifices. I'd given them everything, $23 million, my pride, my trust, only to be spat on like some street beggar. My bungalow felt like a mausoleum, each creak of the floorboards reminding me of Ellen's absence and the family I'd lost to greed. Yet, as I stared at the faded photo of her on the counter, her eyes seemed to whisper, "Fight, Arthur. You're not done yet." My phone buzzed again, shattering the silence. It was Claudia Wentworth, Vanessa's mother, her name on the screen like a slap. I answered, steeling myself. "Listen up, you washed-up slumlord," she hissed, her voice dripping with buckhead elitism, laced with street-sharp cruelty. "You think you can just sulk off and play victim? Keep your broke-ass stories out of our holiday, or I'll make sure every socialite in Atlanta knows you're a cheap nobody who got lucky." Her words were a gut punch, each syllable designed to degrade. Before I could respond, she added, "And don't even think about showing up at our gala next week. You're not on the guest list, old man. Stay in your dump and count your pennies." The line went dead, her laughter echoing in my ears like a taunt from the devil himself. I sat frozen, my heart pounding as the insults sank in. A gala I'd funded with a $2 million donation to their precious Wentworth Foundation, and I wasn't even invited. The audacity was staggering, but it was only the first blow of the morning. My phone pinged again, this time with an email from my accountant, Jerry Klein, a wiry man who'd managed my books for 20 years. I'd always trusted Jerry, considered him a friend, someone who'd stood by me through market crashes and personal losses. But the email subject line, urgent, account discrepancy, sent a chill down my spine. Jerry had discovered unauthorized transfers totaling $300,000 from my personal trust to an offshore account linked to Preston. The memo read, Wentworth Christmas Fund. My own son, siphoning my money to curry favor with Vanessa's parents, and Jerry hadn't caught it until now. Worse, a follow-up text from Jerry admitted he'd overlooked earlier transactions because Preston had convinced him they were family approved. The betrayal hit like a freight train, piling onto the wreckage of last night. Jerry, the man who'd toasted Ellen's memory at my table, had either been negligent or complicit. My mind raced, torn between rage and despair. Had I been so blind, so desperate for family, that I'd surrounded myself with vipers? I wanted to call Jerry, demand answers. But a deeper part of me, the part that had survived cutthroat deals and heartbreak, knew I couldn't trust his response. Instead, I turned to Sarah, my housekeeper, whose loyalty was the only anchor I had left. I dialed her number, my voice shaking. Sarah, they're stealing from me now. Preston's taking hundreds of thousands, and Jerry might be in on it. Her response was immediate, fierce. Mr. Reynolds, those snakes don't deserve you. I'm coming over. We'll figure this out together. Her words were a balm, but they couldn't erase the growing void in my chest. Then came the third shock, a text from Lila, Nathan's assistant, who'd unwittingly exposed their mockery yesterday. It was a screenshot of a private Instagram story from Vanessa, posted hours ago. A photo of her and Preston at a rooftop bar, clinking martini glasses, with the caption, Here's to ditching the dead weight, cheers to a drama-free Christmas. The post tagged Claudia, Edward, and most shockingly my old business rival, Victor Langston. Victor, a sleazy developer who'd tried to sabotage my projects for decades, was now cozying up to my family, likely egging them on to humiliate me further. The realization was a knife twist. My enemies weren't just within my family. They'd recruited an outsider who'd always hated my success. Victor's involvement turned this from a personal betrayal into a public vendetta, a calculated move to erase my legacy. My hands trembled as I set the phone down, the weight of these new betrayals crushing me. I walked to the window, staring at the Buckhead skyline I'd helped build, now a mocking reminder of what I'd lost. The internal struggle was unbearable. Part of me wanted to believe there was still good in Nathan, that Preston could be redeemed, that Marcus and Jerry had just made mistakes. I pictured their faces at family dinners, the laughter we'd shared, the promises of loyalty. Had it all been a lie? The other part of me, the survivor, the fighter, screamed for action. They'd taken my money, my dignity, my place in their world, and now they were flaunting it with my enemies. I wasn't just a victim. I was a man who'd been played for a fool, and the shame burned hotter than the anger. Sarah arrived within the hour, her face etched with concern, but also a quiet strength. Mr. Reynolds, you're not alone, she said, setting a thermos of her homemade coffee on the table. My brother Tommy works security at the Wentworth's Country Club. He's heard things Vanessa and Preston bragging about how they've got you wrapped around their finger. But we're going to turn this around. Her loyalty sparked something in me, a flicker of hope amid the darkness. But then my phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail from Victor Langston himself. His voice was pure venom, laced with the smugness of a man who thought he'd won. Arthur, you really thought you could keep up with the big dogs? Your kids sold you out, and I'm just here to pick up the scraps. Stay out of our way or I'll make sure Atlanta forgets your name. The threat was a match to gasoline, igniting a fury I hadn't felt in years. I stood, my fists clenched, as Sarah watched me with quiet resolve. The betrayals, Claudia's insults, Jerry's negligence, Preston's theft, Vanessa's mockery, Victor's gloating weren't just personal. They were a declaration of war. My mind churned, torn between the grief of losing my family and the hunger for justice. I'd spent decades building a legacy, only to see it plundered by those I loved most. But as I looked at Sarah, then at Ellen's photo, I knew I couldn't let this stand. Sarah, I said, my voice low but steady, get Tommy on the phone. We're not just fighting back, we're going to burn their world down. The Atlanta skyline glittered outside, but inside my bungalow, a new plan was taking shape, one that would make them all regret crossing Arthur Reynolds. The morning light filtered through the cracked blinds of my Buckhead bungalow, casting jagged shadows across the kitchen table where I sat, Sarah's thermos of coffee steaming beside a stack of bank statements. The weight of yesterday's betrayals, Claudia's vicious taunts, Jerry's negligence, Preston's theft, Vanessa's public mockery, and Victor Langston's threats pressed against my chest like a vice. $23 million I'd poured into their lives, only to be treated like a street hustler who'd overstayed his welcome. But as I sipped Sarah's coffee, its bitter warmth grounding me, a shift was happening. The grief that had nearly drowned me was hardening into something sharper, something dangerous. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man ready to reclaim what was mine, starting with my dignity. My phone buzzed, shattering the quiet. It was Edward Wentworth, Vanessa's father. His name on the screen like a venomous snake coiled to strike. I answered, bracing for impact. "You pathetic old fool," he barked, his voice thick with Atlanta's old money arrogance and street-edged venom. "Think you can play hardball with us? Keep your sorry ass out of our business, or I'll bury you so deep in Buckhead's gossip mill you'll wish you'd stayed in whatever slum you crawled out of." His words were a Molotov cocktail, igniting the rage I'd been holding back. Before I could fire back, he sneered. "And don't even dream of crashing our New Year's bash at the country club. You're blacklisted, you lowlife. Stick to your cheap whiskey and leave the high life to us." The call ended with his cackle, a sound that echoed like a nail in my coffin. I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking with a fury I hadn't felt since my early days scrapping for deals in Atlanta's cutthroat real estate game. Edward's threat wasn't just personal. It was a declaration that I didn't belong in the world I'd built. The New Year's bash at the Piedmont Driving Club, funded by my $3 million sponsorship, was where Atlanta's elite would gather, and they'd barred me from it. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, but it was only the first shock of the day. My laptop pinged with an email from Lila, Nathan's assistant, who'd become an unwitting ally after leaking their group chat. Attached was a forwarded message from Preston to Victor Langston, outlining a plan to reallocate another $500,000 from my investment portfolio to a shell company Victor controlled. The email ended with Preston's smug note. "Dad's too busy licking his wounds to notice. Let's clean him out before he catches on." My own son, conspiring with my rival to rob me blind. The second blow landed harder. Sarah, who'd stayed over to help me strategize, handed me a manila envelope she'd found slipped under my door at dawn. Inside was a forged document, a power of attorney form bearing my signature, granting Nathan control over my primary trust fund, worth $10 million. The notary stamp was from a shady downtown office I'd never visited, and the date was 2 days ago. Nathan, my own flesh and blood, had faked my signature to seize my fortune, likely at Vanessa's urging. The realization was a knife to the gut, twisting with every breath. I'd raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him, and now he was stealing not just my money, but my legacy. Sarah's face darkened as she read the document, her voice trembling with righteous anger. "Mr. Reynolds, they're vultures, but we've got Tommy on our side, and he's digging up dirt at the club. We'll make them pay." The third shock came like a thunderclap. My phone lit up with a text from Marcus, my so-called best friend, who'd already betrayed me by siding with Vanessa's crew. "Art, let's talk," it read. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Meet me at the diner on Peachtree. I'll explain everything." Against my better judgment, I drove to the Greasy Spoon where we'd shared countless lunches, hoping for a shred of redemption. But when I arrived, Marcus wasn't alone. Victor Langston sat beside him, smirking like a shark who'd scented blood. "Tough break, Reynolds," Victor drawled, his voice pure street swagger. "Your boys sold you out for pocket change. Shoulda known better than to trust family, you dumb old bastard." Marcus avoided my eyes, muttering, "It wasn't personal, Art, just business." Business. The word burned, a final betrayal from the man I'd called my brother for decades. I stood there, the diner's neon lights buzzing overhead, my heart torn between despair and defiance. The internal struggle was a war zone. Part of me wanted to collapse, to beg Marcus to explain, to believe Nathan didn't know about the forged document, that Preston was just misguided. I saw flashes of Nathan as a boy, running to me after school, of Marcus toasting my first big deal. Had I failed them? Was I too proud, too generous, too blind to their greed? But the fighter in me, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, roared back. They'd taken my money, my trust, my place in their world, and now they were laughing about it with my worst enemy. The shame of being played was suffocating, but it was fueling something else, a cold, calculated resolve to turn their game against them. I walked out of the diner without a word, Victor's laughter trailing behind me like poison. Back home, Sarah and Tommy were waiting, their faces set with determination. Tommy, a burly ex-Marine who'd worked security for me before joining the country club, pulled out his phone. "Got something for you, boss," he said, showing me a recording from the club's bar. It was Vanessa, drunk and bragging to Claudia. "Arthur's done. We've got his cash, his trust, and his idiot sons eating out of our hands. By New Year's, he'll be a nobody." The recording was a grenade, blowing open the depth of their conspiracy. Sarah gripped my hand, her eyes fierce. "They think they've won, Mr. Reynolds, but you're not finished. Let's hit them where it hurts." I nodded, my mind racing. The betrayals, Edward's threats, Preston's theft, Nathan's forgery, Marcus's cowardice, Vanessa's gloating, Victor's taunts were a web tightening around me. But I wasn't trapped yet. I pulled out my laptop, logging into my bank's secure portal. The trust fund was still intact, but I had hours, maybe days, before Nathan's forged document took effect. "Sarah, Tommy," I said, my voice steady as steel, "we're not just stopping them. We're going to dismantle their world piece by piece." The Atlanta skyline loomed outside, a glittering reminder of what I'd built and what they'd tried to steal. The fight was on, and Arthur Reynolds was ready to play dirty. The Atlanta afternoon hung heavy with humidity, the air thick as my resolve as I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal. Sarah's coffee thermos was cold now, but her presence, along with Tommy's, kept me anchored. The sting of Edward's threats, Nathan's forged document, Preston's theft, Marcus's treachery, and Vanessa's recorded gloating burned like acid in my veins. $23 million I'd given them, and now they were plotting to strip me of $10 million more through a fake power of attorney. My bungalow, once a sanctuary, felt like a battlefield. Every creak of the floorboards a reminder of the war I was now fighting. But the fire in me wasn't just anger, it was a promise to myself, to Ellen's memory, that I'd reclaim my worth, no matter the cost. My phone lit up again, this time with a video call from Vanessa herself. Her face filled the screen, her designer makeup barely hiding the sneer curling her lips. "Yo, you sad old has-been," she spat, her voice pure Atlanta street venom. "You still crying over your little feelings? Newsflash, Grandpa, you're done. We've got your cash, your sons, and your so-called legacy. Crawl back to your shitty bungalow and stay out of our shine." Her laughter was a blade, but before I could respond, she panned the camera to show Claudia and Edward in the background, raising champagne glasses at their Peachtree mansion, toasting to a Reynolds-free future. The call cut off, leaving me staring at a blank screen, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and humiliation. The first shock of the day hit like a lightning bolt. Tommy, who'd been digging through his contacts at the Piedmont Driving Club, slid his phone across the table. It was a screenshot from a private club group chat, forwarded by a bartender friend. The chat, led by Preston, revealed a new layer of betrayal. He'd been spreading lies to Atlanta's elite, claiming I was bankrupt, senile, and a liability to the Reynolds name. He'd convinced the club's board, where I'd been a member for 20 years, to revoke my membership, citing concerns about financial instability. My own son, tarnishing my reputation to secure his place among the Wentworth's inner circle. The board's decision letter, attached to the chat, cited a unanimous vote influenced by Victor Langston, who'd apparently donated $500,000 to sway them. My legacy, built over decades, was being erased in a backroom deal. The second blow was even more brutal. Sarah, her eyes blazing with fury, handed me a USB drive she'd gotten from Lila, who'd been secretly copying files from Nathan's office. The drive contained audio recordings of a meeting between Nathan, Vanessa, and a shady lawyer named Reggie Holt, a lowlife I'd once fired for trying to scam my company. In the recording, Nathan's voice was cold, calculated. "Dad's too soft to check the fine print. Once we lock in the trust fund, we'll funnel $10 million to Victor's offshore account. He'll cut us in for half." Vanessa chimed in, giggling. "And when the old man's broke, we'll stick him in a cheap nursing home and call it charity." Reggie's laugh sealed the deal, a sound that turned my stomach. My own son, planning to institutionalize me to cover their theft. The third shock came like a tidal wave. My phone pinged with a notification from my security system, showing footage from my office downtown. Someone had broken in last night, and the grainy video revealed Marcus, my supposed best friend, rifling through my desk. He pocketed a folder labeled Reynolds Trust and slipped out, glancing nervously at the camera. A text from Tommy confirmed the worst. Marcus had handed the folder to Victor at a dive bar off Peachtree, likely containing sensitive documents that could expose my financial strategies. The betrayal was a sledgehammer, shattering the last fragments of trust I'd clung to. Marcus, who'd stood by me at Ellen's funeral, was now selling my secrets to my enemy. I sank into my chair, the room spinning as the weight of these betrayals crushed me. My mind was a war zone, torn between despair and defiance. I saw Nathan's boyish grin from years ago, the way he'd hug me after a Little League game. I remembered Marcus's toasts, his promises of brotherhood. Had I pushed them away? Was my generosity a weakness, inviting their greed? The guilt gnawed at me, whispering that I'd failed as a father, as a friend. But the fighter in me, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, screamed louder. They'd taken my money, my trust, my reputation, and now they were plotting to lock me away like some forgotten relic. The shame was suffocating, but it was also a spark, igniting a plan that would turn their arrogance against them. Sarah's voice cut through my haze. "Mr. Reynolds, they're not just stealing your money, they're stealing your life. But we've got proof now." She gestured to the USB drive and Tommy's screenshots. Tommy, his ex-Marine grit shining through, added, "I've got a buddy in the DA's office. Reggie Holt's got a rap sheet fraud, forgery. We can use this to nail them." Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me back from the abyss. I stood, my hands steady for the first time that day, and walked to my safe. Inside were the original trust documents, untouched by Nathan's forgery. I pulled them out, my mind racing. "We're not just stopping the trust fund," I said, my voice low and resolute. "We're freezing every account they've touched, every penny." I logged into my bank's portal, my fingers flying as I initiated a lockdown on my accounts, flagging the forged power of attorney as fraudulent. The $10 million trust was safe for now. But this wasn't enough. I needed to hit them where it hurt, their precious social standing. Tommy grinned, pulling up a photo from the club's security feed. Vanessa, drunk and yelling at a waiter, her perfect image cracking. "This is our ammo," he said. "We leaked this, and their high society friends will drop them like hot garbage." Sarah nodded, her eyes fierce. "And I've got cousins in the press. We can make sure Atlanta knows who the real vultures are. Are you enjoying the story so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just drop a quick comment below to share how you feel. It only takes a few seconds. But your words give me the motivation and inspiration to make every chapter more thrilling and engaging. Go ahead, let me know what's on your mind. And now, let's dive back into the story. The betrayals, Edward's threats, Preston's lies, Nathan's plot, Marcus's theft, Vanessa's cruelty. Victor's schemes were a noose around my neck, but I was cutting it loose. I looked at Ellen's photo, her smile urging me on. "I'm done being their fool," I said, my voice a vow. "Sarah, Tommy, get ready. We're not just fighting back, we're taking everything they value." The Atlanta skyline glimmered outside, a testament to my strength. They thought they'd broken Arthur Reynolds, but they'd only awakened a warrior. The Atlanta dusk settled over my Buckhead bungalow, painting the walls with shadows as I stood over my kitchen table, now a war room littered with evidence of betrayal. Bank statements, Tommy's screenshots, Lila's USB drive, and the forged power of attorney that nearly cost me $10 million. The wounds from Vanessa's taunts, Edward's threats, Preston's lies, Nathan's plot, Marcus's theft, and Victor's schemes bled into a single, searing resolve. $23 million I'd given them, only to be mocked, robbed, and erased from their world. But the fire in my chest wasn't just rage, it was a vow to Ellen's memory, to the man I'd been, to dismantle their empire of deceit. Sarah and Tommy sat across from me, their loyalty a beacon in this storm, as we planned our counterattack. My phone erupted with a text from Claudia, her words dripping with venom sharper than any Buckhead socialite's knife. "Hey, you broke-ass dinosaur," she typed, her tone pure Atlanta street swagger. "Keep your crusty self away from our New Year's bash, or I'll make sure every gossip rag in this city paints you as the pathetic loser you are. You're nothing but a bank account we don't need anymore." The message ended with a middle finger emoji, a childish jab that burned like acid. Before I could process it, a second message arrived, a photo of her, Vanessa and Preston at the Piedmont Driving Club, posing with my former attorney, Evelyn Marsh, a woman I'd trusted for 15 years. The caption read, "New legal team, new game. Reynolds is history." Evelyn, who drafted my will, was now in their pocket, likely helping them legitimize their theft. The first shock hit like a grenade. Tommy, scrolling through his phone, showed me a leaked email from Evelyn to Victor Langston, forwarded by his bartender contact. It detailed a plan to file a false competency hearing against me, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my finances. The goal? To seize control of my entire estate. $50 million in assets by declaring me senile. Evelyn's email noted, "Arthur's too distracted by family drama to fight this. We'll have him in a courtroom by January." My own lawyer, who'd cried at Ellen's funeral, was now orchestrating my downfall alongside my enemy. The betrayal was a sledgehammer, cracking the last pillar of trust I'd held onto. The second blow was even more vicious. Sarah, her face pale, handed me a printout from Lila, who'd hacked into Nathan's cloud storage. It was a contract between Nathan, Vanessa, and a shady PR firm, paid $300,000 from my accounts to launch a smear campaign against me. The campaign's goal, to paint me as a washed-up tycoon who'd lost his grip, ensuring Atlanta's elite shunned me while they secured my wealth. Attached was a mock-up of a tabloid headline, "Reynolds' Ruin: How a Real Estate Mogul Lost It All." Vanessa's handwritten note on the contract read, "Make sure the old man's name is mud by the gala." My own son, weaponizing my legacy to bury me, while Vanessa laughed and spent my money on their lies. The third shock was a gut-wrenching revelation. Tommy's DA contact sent a voice memo, recorded at a downtown bar where Reggie Holt, the crooked lawyer, was bragging to a client. "Reynolds is a sitting duck," Reggie slurred. "Nathan and Preston got me forging more than just that trust stock. We've got deeds, contracts, even his mama's old house in Decatur, $2 million worth transferred to Vanessa's name. By spring, he'll be homeless. My mother's house, the one I'd kept sacred for Ellen's sake, was now another pawn in their game. The thought of losing that piece of my history, where Ellen and I raised our boys, was a dagger to my soul. I staggered to the sink, gripping the counter as the room spun. My mind was a battlefield, torn between heartbreak and fury. I saw Nathan as a toddler, running through that Decatur house, Ellen's laughter filling the air. I remembered Evelyn's promises to protect my legacy, Reggie's fake apologies when I fired him. Had I been too trusting, too desperate for family to see their greed? The guilt was crushing, whispering that I'd failed Ellen by letting our sons become monsters. But the fighter in me, the man who'd outmaneuvered Atlanta's sharks, roared back. They'd stolen my money, my reputation, my mother's home, and now they were trying to lock me away as a lunatic. The shame of being their fool was a weight, but it was also a catalyst, forging a plan to burn their world to ash. Sarah's voice broke through, steady and fierce. "Mr. Reynolds, they're not just after your money, they're after your soul, but we've got enough to bury them." She pointed to the evidence pile, her eyes blazing. Tommy, his marine grit unyielding, added, "My DA buddy says Reggie's forgeries are sloppy. One call, and we can get an investigation started. But we gotta move fast." Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me from despair. I straightened, my hands no longer shaking, and turned to my safe. Inside were the original trust documents, untouched by Nathan's forgery. I pulled them out, my mind racing. "First, we protect what's left," I said, my voice a low growl. I called my bank, initiating a full audit of my accounts, freezing every transaction linked to Nathan, Preston, or Vanessa. The $50 million estate was locked down, and I flagged Evelyn's competency hearing as fraud. But protection wasn't enough. I needed to strike. Tommy pulled up another club photo. Claudia, drunk and berating a server, her perfect image crumbling. "This goes to my press contact," I said, my mind racing. "And Lila, get me everything else on their PR firm. We're exposing their whole game." Sarah grinned, her loyalty unwavering. "My cousin at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution owes me. We'll make sure this hits front-page news." I looked at Ellen's photo, her eyes urging me forward. "They think they've won," I said, my voice cold as steel, "but they've forgotten who I am. The betrayals, Claudia's taunts, Evelyn's treachery, Nathan's smear campaign, Preston's lies, Reggie's forgeries. Victor's schemes were a cage, but I was breaking free. I pulled out my old Rolodex, flipping to a contact I hadn't called in years. A private investigator named Carla, who owed me a favor from a deal gone south. "Carla," I said when she answered, "I need dirt on Victor Langston and the Wentworths. Everything." She chuckled, her voice gritty. "About time you fought back, Arthur. Give me 48 hours. The Atlanta skyline glowed outside, a reminder of the empire I'd built. They thought they'd broken me, but Arthur Reynolds was just getting started. The Atlanta night wrapped my Buckhead bungalow in a heavy silence, broken only by the faint hum of crickets outside and the steady ticking of the clock above my kitchen sink. My war room table was a fortress of evidence. Tommy's screenshots, Lila's USB drive, the forged power of attorney, and now Carla's promise to unearth dirt on Victor and the Wentworths. The betrayals, Claudia's vicious texts, Evelyn's competency plot, Nathan's smear campaign, Preston's lies, Reggie's theft of my mother's Decatur house, and Marcus's betrayal had carved deep scars, each one a reminder of the $23 million I'd poured into their ungrateful hands. But as I sat with Sarah and Tommy, their loyalty a flickering light in this darkness, I felt a shift. The pain was no longer a weight. It was a weapon, honed and ready to strike. My phone buzzed with a voice message from Preston, his tone slick with the street-smart bravado he'd learned from Vanessa. Yo, old man, you still whining about your sad little life? He sneered, his voice dripping with Atlanta's underbelly swagger. We're done with your broke-ass drama. Keep your nose out of our business, or I'll make sure every bar in this city knows you're a washed-up nobody who can't even afford a beer. The message ended with a laugh, joined by Vanessa's cackle in the background, a sound that twisted like a knife in my gut. But the real sting came when I saw the voicemail was recorded at the Fox Theater, where I'd bought them a private box for their anniversary, another $50,000 of my money, now a stage for their mockery. The first shock of the night landed like a bomb. Carla, my private investigator, called with a bombshell. She'd uncovered a secret deal between Victor Langston and Edward Wentworth, brokered through a shell company tied to Preston. They'd siphoned $2 million from my real estate holdings by forging my signature on a sale of a downtown property I'd owned since the 82nd. The deal was finalized yesterday, with the funds funneled to a Cayman Islands account labeled Wentworth Legacy Trust. Preston, my own son, had sold a piece of my empire behind my back, using Victor's connections to make it look legal. Carla's voice was grim. They're moving fast, Arthur. They think you're too broken to fight back. The second blow was a gut punch from an unexpected source. Lila, who'd been feeding me intel, sent a frantic text with a link to a private Dropbox folder. Inside was a video from a hidden camera in Nathan's office, capturing a meeting with Claudia and a woman I didn't recognize, Lorna Baxter, a high-profile Buckhead realtor I'd mentored early in her career. Lorna, who'd once called me her guiding star, was now plotting with Claudia to blacklist me from Atlanta's real estate circles. Arthur's done, Lorna said in the video, her voice cold. We spread the word. He's bankrupt, and no one will touch his deals. I'm taking his clients, starting with the Peachtree Tower. That tower, worth $15 million, was my crown jewel, and Lorna was stealing it with Claudia's blessing, all while Nathan nodded along, pocketing another $100,000 from my accounts for consulting fees. The third shock was a heart-wrenching revelation. Sarah, her hands trembling, handed me a letter she'd found in my mailbox, slipped there by an anonymous source. It was a draft of a press release, stamped with the Wentworth Foundation's logo, announcing my retirement due to health concerns. The release, penned by Vanessa, claimed I'd graciously stepped back to let Nathan and Preston carry the Reynolds legacy. It was a lie designed to erase me from Atlanta's elite while they seized my $50 million estate. The kicker? The release mentioned a charitable donation of $5 million from my accounts to the Wentworth Foundation, dated tomorrow. My own family was staging a public coup, painting me as a frail old man while looting my fortune. I collapsed into a chair, the letter crumpling in my fist. My mind was a storm, torn between despair and a burning need for justice. I saw Ellen's face, her gentle smile at our first Peachtree Tower groundbreaking, the pride in her eyes when I mentored Lorna. I remembered Preston's childhood promises to make you proud, Dad. Had I been too generous, too blind to their ambition? The guilt clawed at me, whispering that I'd failed to teach my son's honor, that I'd let Ellen's legacy become a plaything for vultures. But the fighter in me, the man who'd turned dirt lots into skyscrapers, surged forward. They'd stolen my property, my clients, my name, and now they were rewriting my life to bury me. The shame was a furnace, but it was forging a plan to make them pay. Sarah's voice cut through the haze, fierce and unwavering. Mr. Reynolds, they're trying to erase you, but we've got the upper hand now. She pointed to the evidence pile, her eyes blazing with resolve. Tommy, his marine grit shining, added, my DA buddy's ready to move on Reggie's forgeries. And Carla's got more on Victor tax evasion, shady deals. We can take them all down. Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me from the brink. I stood, my hands steady, and opened my laptop. First, we stopped that donation, I said, my voice a low growl. I called my bank, flagging the $5 million transfer as fraudulent and locking down the Peachtree Tower's title. The estate was secure for now, but defense wasn't enough. I needed to strike back, hard. Tommy pulled up another photo. Edward, caught on camera bribing a city official at a Buckhead steakhouse, a deal to rezone my property for Victor's gain. This goes to Carla, I said, my mind racing. And Sarah, get your cousin at the Journal-Constitution ready. We're not just exposing them, we're humiliating them. Sarah nodded, her loyalty a rock. They'll wish they never crossed you, Mr. Reynolds. I looked at Ellen's photo, her eyes urging me on. They think they've won, I said, my voice cold as steel. But they're about to learn what happens when you betray Arthur Reynolds. The betrayals, Claudia's taunts, Lorna's treachery, Nathan's complicity, Preston's theft, Vanessa's coup. Victor's schemes were a prison, but I was breaking out. I texted Carla, dig deeper on Edward's bribes. I want everything by tomorrow. Her reply was instant. On it, Arthur. They're done. The Atlanta skyline glowed outside, a reminder of the empire I'd built. They thought they'd buried me, but Arthur Reynolds was rising, ready to burn their world to the ground. The Atlanta morning broke with a humid haze, the kind that clung to your skin like regret. My Buckhead bungalow was a fortress now, its kitchen table buried under a growing arsenal of evidence. Carla's intel, Tommy's photos, Lila's recordings, and the forged documents that nearly cost me $50 million. The betrayals, Preston's property theft, Lorna's client poaching, Nathan's smear campaign, Vanessa's press release, Claudia's taunts, and Victor's schemes had stripped me bare, leaving scars deeper than the $23 million I'd lost to their greed. But with Sarah and Tommy by my side, their loyalty a steady pulse in this chaos, I was no longer the broken man they'd tried to bury. The pain had forged me into something new, a warrior ready to tear down their world. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail from Victor Langston, his voice slithering through the speaker like oil. "Yo, Reynolds, you decrepit old fool," he snarled, his tone pure Atlanta street venom. "You think you can play in our league? Your kids ditched you, your friends sold you out, and now you're just a sad sack clutching your empty wallet. Stay out of our way, or I'll make sure every dive bar in this city laughs you out of town." The message ended with a chuckle, joined by Edward Wentworth's smug grunt, recorded at a Buckhead cigar lounge I'd once funded with a $100,000 membership fee. Their laughter was a match to gasoline, igniting a fury that drowned out the ache in my chest. The first shock of the day hit like a wrecking ball. Carla texted me a bombshell. She'd uncovered a secret meeting between Nathan, Vanessa, and a corrupt city council member, Diane Kessler, who I'd once supported in her campaign with a $200,000 donation. Diane, who'd called me a pillar of Atlanta, had agreed to rezone my Peachtree Tower for Victor's development firm, cutting me out of a $15 million deal. The meeting notes, leaked by Carla's mole, revealed Nathan's role. He'd bribed Diane with $50,000 from my accounts, promising her a cut of the profits. My own son, undermining my legacy to line his pockets, while Vanessa cheered him on, calling it cleaning up Dad's mess. The second blow was a knife to the heart. Lila, her hands shaking, sent me a screenshot from a private Facebook group for Buckhead's elite, moderated by Claudia. The group, which I'd been quietly removed from, was abuzz with a new post. A doctored photo of me, looking haggard and disheveled, with a caption from Preston, "Arthur Reynolds, down and out. Time for new blood in Atlanta." The post had comments from Lorna, Edward, and even my old banker, Harold Vance, who I'd trusted for 30 years. Harold's comment read, "Sad to see Arthur fall so low. We're better off without him." Harold, who'd managed my $50 million estate, had joined their smear campaign, likely bribed with $100,000 from my own funds. The betrayal was a gut-wrenching twist, another trusted ally turning traitor. The third shock was a soul-crushing revelation. Tommy, his face grim, showed me a text from his DA contact, attaching a police report filed by Vanessa. She'd accused me of harassing her family, claiming I'd sent threatening messages to her and Claudia, a complete fabrication. The report, backed by a forged text log, was a ploy to get a restraining order, which would bar me from the Piedmont Driving Club's New Year's Gala and justify their competency hearing. The kicker? The report named Marcus as a witness, swearing he'd seen me acting unstable at the diner. Marcus, who'd already sold my secrets, was now perjuring himself to lock me out of my own world. The thought of my best friend, who'd once carried Ellen's coffin, lying to bury me alive, was a wound deeper than any other. I staggered to the living room, collapsing onto the couch where Ellen used to read. My mind was a battlefield, torn between despair and defiance. I saw Nathan's first steps, Preston's graduation speech, Harold's handshake when we closed my biggest deal. Had I been too trusting, too eager to see the good in them? The guilt was a tidal wave, whispering that I'd failed Ellen by letting our sons become pawns in this game of greed. I'd built an empire for them, only to watch it weaponized against me. But the fighter in me, the man who'd outsmarted Atlanta's Sharks, roared back. They'd stolen my deals, my reputation, my allies, and now they were trying to cage me with lies. The shame was a furnace, but it was forging a plan to burn their empire to ash. Sarah's voice snapped me back, fierce and unyielding. "Mr. Reynolds, they're trying to lock you out of your own life, but we've got the keys now." She pointed to the evidence pile, her eyes blazing. Tommy, his marine grit shining, added, My DA buddy says Diane's bribe is enough to start an investigation, and Carla's got more on Harold's shady loans tied to Victor. We can take them down. Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me from the abyss. I stood, my hands steady, and opened my laptop. First, we kill that restraining order, I said, my voice a low growl. I called my lawyer, a new one untainted by Evelyn's betrayal, and filed a counter-report, exposing Vanessa's lies and Marcus's perjury. The $15 million Peachtree Tower deal was frozen, pending investigation. But defense wasn't enough. I needed to strike. Tommy pulled up another photo. Diane Kessler, caught on camera accepting a briefcase from Nathan at a downtown hotel. This goes to Carla, I said, my mind racing. And Sarah, get your cousin at the Journal-Constitution to run a story on Diane's corruption. We're not just stopping them, we're exposing their rot. Sarah nodded, her loyalty a rock. They'll regret ever crossing you, Mr. Reynolds. I looked at Ellen's photo, her eyes urging me on. They think they've won, I said, my voice cold as steel. But they're about to face Arthur Reynolds at his worst. The betrayals, Victor's taunts, Diane's corruption, Harold's treachery, Nathan's bribe, Vanessa's lies, Marcus's perjury were a noose, but I was slipping free. I texted Carla, "Get me everything on Diane's deals. I want her finished." Her reply was instant. "Done, Arthur. They're toast." The Atlanta skyline glittered outside, a testament to my strength. They thought they'd erased me, but Arthur Reynolds was coming for blood. The Atlanta sunrise painted my Buckhead bungalow in hues of gold, but the warmth couldn't touch the cold resolve hardening in my chest. My kitchen table, a war room of vengeance, was strewn with evidence. Carla's damning intel, Tommy's photos, Lila's recordings, and the legal countermeasures that had saved my $50 million estate from Nathan's and Vanessa's grasp. The betrayals, Victor's taunts, Diane's corruption, Harold's treachery, Nathan's bribe, Vanessa's lies, Marcus's perjury, and the theft of my mother's Decatur house had left me raw, but they'd also awakened a warrior. Sarah and Tommy sat with me, their loyalty, a steel thread in this unraveling tapestry of deceit. The $23 million I'd lost to their greed was a wound, but it was also the fuel for my counterstrike. My phone vibrated with a new message from Edward Wentworth, his voice dripping with the kind of street-smart venom that could only come from Atlanta's elite playing dirty. "Yo, you fossilized nobody," he growled in a voicemail. "You think you can outsmart us? Your pathetic little empire's crumbling, and we're pissing on the ashes. Stay in your rat hole, or I'll make sure every club in this city knows you're a broke-ass joke." The message ended with Claudia's shrill laugh, recorded at a rooftop bar I'd funded with a $200,000 donation for their charity event. Their mockery was a spark in a powder keg, igniting a fury that drowned out the pain of their betrayal. The first shock of the morning hit like a tsunami. Carla called, her voice tight with urgency. She'd uncovered a bombshell. Vanessa had orchestrated a fake audit of my company, Reynolds Realty, claiming I'd embezzled $3 million from my own firm. The audit, filed with the state, was backed by forged financial records crafted by Reggie Holt and signed by Harold Vance. Their goal was to trigger an IRS investigation, tying up my assets and painting me as a criminal to Atlanta's business elite. Vanessa's email to Reggie, intercepted by Carla, gloated, "The old man's done. Once the feds freeze his accounts, we'll take the rest of his $50 million. My own daughter-in-law, using my money to frame me as a thief, while Harold, my trusted banker, signed off on the lie. The second blow was a dagger to the soul. Lila, her eyes wide with panic, sent me a video from a hacked security feed at the Wentworth's Peachtree mansion. It showed Preston meeting with a shady art dealer, selling off my private collection paintings Ellen and I had collected over 30 years, worth $5 million. The dealer, a sleaze named Marco Ruiz, was a known fence for stolen goods, and Preston was laughing as he handed over a Monet I'd bought for Ellen's 50th birthday. "Dad's too busy crying to notice," Preston said, pocketing a $100,000 check. The sight of Ellen's beloved painting, a symbol of our love, being sold like cheap junk was a gut-wrenching betrayal. Another piece of my heart stolen by my own son. The third shock was a heart-stopping revelation. Tommy's DA contact texted a bombshell. Claudia had filed a civil lawsuit against me, claiming I'd defrauded the Wentworth Foundation of $10 million in mismanaged donations. The lawsuit, backed by fabricated receipts and Evelyn Marsh's legal muscle, aimed to bankrupt me through legal fees and seize my remaining assets. The kicker? Nathan had provided a sworn affidavit accusing me of coercing him into signing fraudulent contracts, a lie that painted me as a manipulator while he played the victim. My own son, swearing under oath to destroy me, while Claudia's lawsuit threatened to strip away the last of my empire. I sank to the floor, the cold tile biting into my knees as the weight of these betrayals crushed me. My mind was a maelstrom, torn between grief and rage. I saw Ellen smile as we hung that Monet in our old Decatur home, the pride in Nathan's eyes when I taught him to negotiate deals, the trust I'd placed in Harold's handshakes. Had I been too generous, too blind to their greed? The guilt was a tidal wave, whispering that I'd failed Ellen by letting our legacy become a weapon. I'd built a world for my family, only to watch it turned against me. But the fighter in me, the man who'd clawed his way from nothing, surged forward. They'd framed me, sold my treasures, sued me, and now they were lying under oath to bury me. The shame was a crucible, forging a plan to make them choke on their own lies. Sarah's voice broke through, fierce and unyielding. "Mr. Reynolds, they're trying to destroy you, but we've got the evidence to burn them first." She pointed to the pile, her eyes blazing with defiance. Tommy, his marine resolve unshaken, added, "My DA buddy says the audit's flimsy Reggie's forgeries won't hold up, and Carla's got dirt on Marco Ruiz. He's been dodging taxes for years." Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me from despair. I stood, my hands steady, and opened my laptop. "First, we kill that lawsuit," I said, my voice a low growl. I called my new lawyer, forwarding Carla's evidence of the fake audit and forged receipts. The $10 million lawsuit was flagged as fraudulent, and I filed a countersuit for defamation, naming Claudia, Nathan, and Evelyn. But defense wasn't enough. I needed to strike. Tommy pulled up a video. Marco Ruiz, caught on camera bragging about fencing my art to a Miami buyer implicating Preston. "This goes to Carla," I said, my mind racing. "And Sarah, get your cousin at the Journal-Constitution to run a story on the art theft. We're not just stopping them, we're exposing their crimes." Sarah nodded, her loyalty a fortress. "They'll wish they never crossed you, Mr. Reynolds." I looked at Ellen's photo, her eyes urging me on. "They think they've won," I said, my voice cold as steel. "But they're about to face Arthur Reynolds' wrath. The betrayals, Edward's taunts, Vanessa's audit, Preston's art theft, Claudia's lawsuit, Nathan's affidavit. Harold's lies were a cage, but I was breaking free. I texted Carla, "Get me everything on Marco's deals. I want him and Preston finished." Her reply was instant. "Done, Arthur. Their history." The Atlanta skyline glittered outside, a reminder of the empire I'd built. They thought they'd broken me, but Arthur Reynolds was ready to unleash hell. The Atlanta noon sun blazed through my Buckhead bungalow's windows, casting harsh light on the war room table, now a battlefield of evidence. Carla's intel, Tommy's photos, Lila's recordings, and legal documents that had saved my $50 million estate from collapse. The betrayals, Vanessa's fake audit, Preston's art theft, Claudia's lawsuit, Nathan's affidavit, Edward's taunts, and Harold's lies had stripped me to the bone, each cut a reminder of the $23 million I'd poured into their ungrateful hands. But Sarah and Tommy's unwavering loyalty, coupled with Carla's relentless digging, had transformed my pain into a weapon. I wasn't the broken man they'd tried to bury. I was Arthur Reynolds, and I was ready to make them pay. My phone lit up with a venomous text from Nathan, his words dripping with street-smart cruelty he'd learned from Vanessa. "Yo, you washed-up old hack," he typed, his tone pure Atlanta gutter swagger. "You think you can mess with us? Your sorry ass is done, your money's ours, and we're laughing all the way to the bank. Stay in your shitty shack, or I'll make sure every street corner in this city knows you're a pathetic nobody." The message included a selfie of him, Vanessa, and Victor Langston at a yacht party on Lake Lanier, toasting with champagne I'd paid for with a $100,000 boat rental. Their smug grins were a spark to my fury, but the real sting was knowing my own son was leading the charge to destroy me. The first shock of the day hit like a freight train. Carla called, her voice sharp with urgency. She'd uncovered a secret deal between Edward Wentworth and a corrupt judge, Leonard Pike, who I'd once hosted at my Buckhead estate with a $50,000 charity dinner. Pike had agreed to fast-track Claudia's lawsuit against me, ensuring my $50 million estate would be tied up in court for years while they drained it through legal fees. Carla's mole had intercepted an email from Edward to Pike boasting, "Reynolds is toast. We'll bleed him dry before he knows what hit him." My own generosity, used to wine and dine a judge, was now a weapon to bankrupt me. The second blow was a heart-shattering betrayal. Lila, her hands trembling, sent me a voice recording from a hidden mic in Vanessa's office. It captured a meeting between Vanessa Preston and my former business partner, Clara Dempsey, who I'd mentored into Atlanta's real estate elite with a $2 million loan. Clara, who'd called me family at my company's 20th anniversary, was now plotting to seize my remaining properties worth $20 million by forging lease agreements that funneled rents to Victor's firm. In the recording, Vanessa laughed. Arthur's too busy sulking to check his own books. Clara's got his tenants eating out of our hands. Preston added, let's sell his Buckhead lots next, another $5 million for us. The betrayal was a knife, twisting with the memory of Clara's gratitude, now revealed as a lie. The third shock was a soul-crushing revelation. Tommy's DA contact sent a bombshell. Marcus, my former best friend, had filed a whistleblower report with the SEC, falsely accusing me of insider trading on a deal that saved my Peachtree Tower. The report, backed by fabricated emails, claimed I'd manipulated stock prices, risking a federal investigation that could freeze my assets and land me in prison. The kicker? Marcus had named Nathan as his source, claiming my son had uncovered my crimes. My own son and best friend, conspiring to frame me as a felon, while Victor likely pulled the strings, laughing as my empire crumbled. I slumped against the kitchen counter, the cold granite biting into my palms as the weight of these betrayals crushed me. My mind was a war zone, torn between grief and rage. I saw Clara's tearful thank you at my loan signing, Nathan's boyish pride when I taught him to tie a tie, Marcus's arm around me at Ellen's wake. Had I been too trusting, too desperate to believe in their loyalty? The guilt was a storm, whispering that I'd failed Ellen by letting our sons become pawns in this game of greed. I'd built an empire for my family, only to watch it weaponized against me. But the fighter in me, the man who'd outsmarted Atlanta's sharks, surged forward. They'd framed me, stolen my properties, and now they were trying to jail me. The shame was a crucible, forging a plan to make them choke on their lies. Sarah's voice cut through, fierce and unyielding. Mr. Reynolds, they're trying to bury you alive, but we've got the shovel to dig them out. She pointed to the evidence pile, her eyes blazing. Tommy, his Marine resolve ironclad, added, my DA buddy says Pike's got a history of taking bribes. We can flip this on him. And Carla's got Clara's financials offshore accounts tied to Victor. Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me from despair. I stood, my hands steady, and opened my laptop. First, we kill that SEC report, I said, my voice a low growl. I called my new lawyer, forwarding Carla's evidence of Marcus's fabricated emails and Nathan's complicity. The $20 million property leases were frozen, pending investigation. But defense wasn't enough. I needed to strike. Tommy pulled up a video. Leonard Pike, caught on camera accepting a briefcase from Edward at a Midtown hotel, implicating them in bribery. This goes to Carla, I said, my mind racing, and Sarah. Get your cousin at the Journal-Constitution to run a story on Pike's corruption. We're not just stopping them, we're destroying their credibility. Sarah nodded, her loyalty a fortress. They'll beg for mercy, Mr. Reynolds. I looked at Ellen's photo, her eyes urging me on. They think they've won, I said, my voice cold as steel. But they're about to face Arthur Reynolds' justice. End of fram. The betrayals, Nathan's taunts, Edward's judicial fix, Clara's theft, Marcus's SEC plot, Vanessa's schemes. Victor's strings were a prison, but I was breaking free. I texted Carla. Get me everything on Pike's bribes and Clara's accounts. I want them finished. Her reply was instant. Done, Arthur. They're gone. The Atlanta skyline glittered outside, a testament to my strength. They thought they'd broken me, but Arthur Reynolds was ready to unleash a storm. The Atlanta twilight draped my Buckhead bungalow in a velvet hush, but inside, my war room pulsed with the electric hum of retribution. The table was a fortress of evidence, Carla's intel, Tommy's videos, Lila's recordings, and legal documents that had shielded my $50 million estate from Nathan's, Vanessa's, and their allies' grasp. The betrayals, Edward's judicial fix, Clara's property theft, Marcus's SEC plot, and the relentless onslaught of lies had carved deep wounds, each a reminder of the $23 million I'd lost to their greed. But Sarah, Tommy, Lila, and Carla's loyalty had forged my pain into a blade, sharp and ready to cut. Tonight was the Piedmont Driving Club's New Year's Gala, their crown jewel event, funded by my $3 million sponsorship. They thought they'd banished me, but Arthur Reynolds was about to crash their party. My phone buzzed with a video message from Vanessa, her face twisted with a street-smart sneer that could have been ripped from an Atlanta dive bar. Yo, you dried-up old loser, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. You think you can crawl back into our world? Your sorry ass is finished, your money's ours, and we're living large while you rot in that dump. Keep dreaming, Grandpa, 'cause you ain't shit no more. The The video panned to show Nathan, Preston, and Claudia laughing at a VIP table in the club's ballroom, my donated crystal chandeliers glinting above them. Their mockery was a match to my fury, but the real sting was knowing they were toasting their victory on my dime. The first shock of the evening hit like a thunderbolt. Carla texted a bombshell. She'd uncovered a secret pact between Preston, Victor Langston, and a tabloid editor, Gina Holt, who I'd once bailed out of debt with a $100,000 loan. They'd planted a front-page story in tomorrow's Atlanta Journal-Constitution, accusing me of laundering money through my charity foundation, a lie designed to ruin my reputation and justify their theft of my $50 million estate. Gina's email to Preston, intercepted by Carla, gloated, "Reynolds won't know what hit him. This story'll make him untouchable in Atlanta." My own protege, turning my kindness into a weapon to destroy me. The second blow was a soul-shattering betrayal. Lila, her voice trembling, sent me a hacked email chain from Edward to a private security firm, hired to neutralize me at the gala. The firm, led by a thug named Vince Carter, was paid $200,000 from my accounts to stage an incident that would paint me as violent and unstable, bolstering their competency hearing. Edward's email read, "Make sure Reynolds looks like a drunk fool. We need him out of the picture tonight." Nathan had signed off on the plan, adding, "Dad's too weak to fight back. Let's end this." The thought of my son hiring goons to humiliate me, using my own money, was a dagger to my heart. The third shock was a gut-wrenching revelation. Tommy's DA contact sent a text with a leaked bank record. Clara Dempsey had diverted $5 million from my company's pension fund, meant for my employees, to a shell company tied to Victor. The transaction, backdated to look like my doing, was designed to frame me for embezzlement, risking jail time and the livelihoods of my loyal staff. Clara's note to Victor, attached to the record, mocked, "Arthur's too busy playing daddy to notice we've gutted his legacy." The betrayal was a sledgehammer, shattering the memory of Clara's gratitude when I'd mentored her, now revealed as a mask for her greed. I stood in my bedroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror as I knotted my tie, the same navy suit I'd worn to Ellen's funeral. My mind was a tempest, torn between grief and vengeance. I saw Nathan's childhood laughter, Clara's eager questions at our first meeting, Gina's tearful thanks for my loan. Had I been too trusting, too desperate to build a family that valued me? The guilt was a storm, whispering that I'd failed Ellen by letting our legacy be plundered. I'd built an empire for them, only to watch it weaponized against me. But the fighter in me, the man who'd turned dirt into skyscrapers, roared back. They'd framed me, hired thugs, and robbed my employees, all while laughing in my face. The shame was a furnace, forging a plan to make them choke on their lies. Sarah's voice rang out, fierce and unyielding. "Mr. Reynolds, tonight's their reckoning. They're not just stealing your money, they're stealing your name." She handed me a briefcase packed with evidence packets, one for each gala guest. Tommy, his marine grit blazing, added, "Vince Carter's got a rap sheet assault. Extortion. My DA buddy's ready to nab him if he tries anything." Their loyalty was a lifeline, pulling me from despair. I slipped into my suit jacket, my hands steady. "We're not just crashing their party," I said, my voice a low growl. "We're ending their game." I called my lawyer, forwarding Carla's evidence of Gina's tabloid plot and Edward's security scheme. The pension fund was locked down, and I filed an emergency injunction to halt the story. I drove to the Piedmont Driving Club, the Atlanta skyline glowing behind me. The gala was in full swing, chandeliers sparkling, guests in tuxedos sipping my champagne. I walked through the unlocked doors, briefcase in hand, the crowd parting as I entered the ballroom. Vanessa froze, her wine glass trembling. Nathan's face paled. Claudia's jaw dropped. "Good evening," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. "I hope you don't mind me joining your celebration since I paid for it." I began handing out evidence packets, detailing their crimes. The fake audit, the art theft, the lawsuit, the bribes, the SEC plot, the pension theft. Gasps filled the room as Atlanta's elite read the truth. Sarah and Tommy stood by the doors, their eyes fierce. Carla texted, "Vince is detained, days moving on Pike. The betrayals, Nathan's taunts, Gina's tabloid, Edward's thugs, Clara's theft were a cage, but I'd broken free." I looked at Ellen's memory in my heart, her strength urging me on. "They thought they'd bury me," I said, my voice ringing. "But Arthur Reynolds doesn't go down without a fight." The Atlanta night was electric with tension as I stood in the Piedmont Driving Club's glittering ballroom, my briefcase empty after distributing evidence packets that exposed the betrayals of Nathan, Vanessa, Preston, Claudia, Edward, Victor, and their conspirators. The crystal chandeliers I'd funded with a $3 million donation cast a mocking glow over the stunned guests, their murmurs rising as they pored over the truth of my stolen $23 million legacy. The wounds Gina's tabloid plot, Edward's hired thugs, Clara's pension theft, and the relentless campaign to erase me had forged me into a force of reckoning. Sarah and Tommy flanked the exits, their loyalty a steel wall, while Carla's text confirmed Vince Carter's arrest. I was no longer the broken man they'd tried to bury. I was Arthur Reynolds, and this was my moment of justice. My phone buzzed with a final taunt from Claudia, her voice a venomous hiss dripping with Atlanta street swagger. "Yo, you delusional old wreck," she spat in a voicemail. "You think crashing our party changes shit? Your broke ass is history, your money's ours, and we're laughing while you choke on your pathetic tears. Crawl back to your dump, loser." The message ended with Nathan's snicker, recorded in the club's VIP lounge I'd paid for with a $100,000 membership. Their cruelty was a spark to my resolve, but the real sting was knowing they believed they'd won, even as their world crumbled. The first shock of the night hit like a supernova. Carla texted a bombshell. She'd uncovered a secret recording from Victor's office, capturing a meeting where Preston and Vanessa bribed a local television anchor, Tessa Monroe, with $200,000 of my money to air a smear piece framing me as a tax evader. Tessa, who I'd once mentored with a $50,000 scholarship, gloated in the recording. "Reynolds is done. This story'll make him a pariah by morning." My protege, turning my generosity into a weapon to destroy my name, while Preston laughed, "Dad's too soft to fight back." The betrayal was a gut punch, shattering the memory of Tessa's gratitude at her graduation. The second blow was a soul-crushing betrayal. Lila, her voice breaking, sent me a hacked email chain from Nathan to a private equity firm, revealing he'd sold my minority stake in Reynolds Realty worth $10 million to Victor for a fraction of its value. The deal, backdated to hide the theft, was meant to fund their new era without me. Nathan's email mocked, "The old man's too busy whining to notice we've gutted his company." Edward had co-signed the deal, adding, "Let's celebrate at the gala Reynolds' last dime." The thought of my son, whom I'd raised to carry my legacy, selling it to my enemy was a dagger, twisting with every breath. The third shock was a heart-stopping revelation. Tommy's DA contact sent a text with a leaked police report. Marcus had planted drugs in my Buckhead office, intending to tip off the DEA to frame me for trafficking. The report, backed by a forged tip from Clara, aimed to land me in federal prison, ensuring my $50 million estate fell to their control. Marcus's note to Victor, intercepted by Carla, read, "Reynolds is finished. The drugs'll seal the deal. My best friend, who'd shared my grief at Ellen's funeral, was now orchestrating my destruction with a lie that could steal my freedom. The betrayal was a sledgehammer, shattering the last fragments of my trust." I stood at the center of the ballroom, the guests' eyes locked on me as I spoke. "These people, my family, my friends, took my money, my name, my life," I said, my voice steady but thunderous. "They framed me, stole from my employees, and planned to lock me away. But I'm still standing." Vanessa lunged forward, her face twisted with rage. "You're a liar," she screamed, but the guests' gasps drowned her out as they read the evidence. Nathan stammered, "Dad, it's not what it looks like." But I held up a hand, silencing him. "You sold me out, son," I said, my voice breaking. "You all did." My mind was a maelstrom, torn between grief and triumph. I saw Ellen's laughter, Nathan's childhood hugs, Marcus's promises of brotherhood. Had I failed them by giving too much? The guilt was a storm, whispering that I'd let Ellen's dream of family crumble. But the fighter in me, the man who'd built Atlanta's skyline, roared back. They'd taken $23 million, framed me for crimes, and tried to erase me, but I'd turned their lies against them. The shame was a crucible, forging a new Arthur Reynolds, one who'd learned the knowledge of betrayal's cost and the education of standing tall. Sarah's eyes blazed with pride as she whispered, "You did it, Mr. Reynolds." Tommy nodded, his marine grit unwavering. "The DA's moving on Victor and Marcus tonight," Carla texted. "Tessa's story is killed. The equity firm's under investigation." The room erupted in chaos as guests confronted Nathan, Vanessa, and Claudia, their social empire collapsing. I walked out, the Atlanta skyline glittering before me, a testament to my strength. I'd lost my sons, my friends, but I'd gained knowledge, the education that family has earned, not bought. The lesson of this saga is clear. Betrayal may wound, but knowledge and resilience heal. The education of trust teaches us to guard our hearts, to value those who stand by us. Sarah, Tommy, Lila, Carla. The lesson is to never let greed dim your worth, to fight for your legacy with every ounce of strength. The education of forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means moving forward, stronger, wiser. I found a new family in those who chose me, not my money, and that's the lesson that will guide me into a brighter future. To everyone watching, I hope this story resonates. What knowledge have you gained from betrayal? What lesson has life taught you about trust? Share your thoughts on our YouTube channel, RevengeX, like, subscribe, and share to hear more gripping tales daily. How does this story connect to your reality? Drop a comment. We want to hear the education of your heart. Here's to health, 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 a vibrant life and peace every day. Farewell, and see you in the next video.